Welcome everyone to episode 25 of the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor. It's good to have you guys here again, man. 25 episodes in. I started this thing almost a year ago, and here I am. 25 episodes later. It's like kind of a milestone. Sort of feel like the show's sort of in its quarter life crisis or whatever. I guess that's a thing now that I've heard in the last couple of years. Well, anyways, a lot of you guys know that if you've been listening for a while, you know that obviously the bulk of what I do on this show is music related. Some of it has to do with movies, some of it wrestling, some of it just other stuff. Whatever is on my mind at this point. And this is kind of one of those episodes that falls into whatever's on my mind at this point. Now, because this isn't just about the stuff I like and just for me to talk about and give my opinions on things, but I mean, this is also sort of like a life podcast, sort of like a personal journal. And the guest I have this time is someone I had kind of been introduced to just recently. About 2 weeks ago or something, my wife comes home and she lets me know. She's like, "Hey, one of the girls I work with, her husband is really into blogging and podcasting, and he's like you. He's a big Star Wars fan. He's someone you should really talk to." So I'm like, okay, so I guess. I don't know if she gave me his number or she gave him my number or whatever, but we ended up connecting. I got to talking to this guy, and it sounds like he's into a lot of really cool different things, and I think he'll explain what it's all about in a minute. But it kind of struck me because I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just the fact that I've thought about this because I'm coming up on my second wedding anniversary, and I look at other couples and I think like, well, do I want to be, is getting married and possibly having a family going to change how I do things, going to change how I like to express myself? And I look at a guy like my guest today, and I see a guy who's a devoted dad, devoted husband, but still likes to express himself, still likes to talk about the things that he's into, and likes to go for it. I should say he likes to take the things he enjoys and try to make what is sort of a hobby into a possible career. I'm not sure how far along he is in that, but it seems like it's something he's taking seriously. It's something he's putting time into, and that's why I wanted to have this guy on. He is the creator of a website called FamilyFather.com. And of course, being in Orlando, a lot of it has to do with theme parks, and we're in the theme park capital of the world: Disney World, Universal, all that stuff, SeaWorld, you name it, it's all here. And it seems like this guy, kind of reviews a lot of what goes on in these parks from the perspective of your average guy who has a wife and kid, who wants to get some insight on what it's like for the regular guy who's not necessarily affiliated with any of these companies, just represents your average consumer. So I think it's really interesting what he's doing. I think he's the couple times I've talked to this guy, he seems like a really interesting guy. So like I said, it's something a little bit different, but we're just going to do it. So please welcome to the Phoenix Report, Keith Johnson.
Well, thanks for that, Jack. Boy, I'm almost embarrassed, but the glowing report. I'd say that in a way we're somewhat kindred spirits. Our wives both teach at the same school and into a lot of the same things, probably at slightly different stages in our life. I'm coming up on my 12th anniversary, you on your second.
Right.
And
right.
But yeah, I have, and I kind of like the way that you put it. I have found a way to hold on to all those things that a lot of guys think that they have to get rid of when they get married and get serious and do something, whatever. I was also very fortunate that my wife and I had a couple things in common right off the bat, some of which we didn't talk about until later. Like we came to find out, for example, I was watching Star Trek Next Generation rerun many years ago before we were married. And she came in and I said, "Oh, well, it's one I've seen. I can flip it off." And she said, "No, that's all right," kind of acting like she didn't mind. But as it turns out, although we're 4 years apart, I stretched my college experience out as long as I could. And for part of it, we were both at the same time, her at her first college, me at my second.
So
Um,
is that how you guys met? Was it in school?
no, no, long after we met down here, many years after, we both met a good 6 years after we had both given up on people, or
Right.
coupling off at least, and
That
we had
happens sometimes.
we did. We had both gone on an intentional "I'm not dating anyone till I have to" break,
Right.
and it was kind of an accident that we met. But I lived in Buena Vista Point Apartments down the road from where they were. Um, but as it turned out, in college, we both would come home after college in the afternoons and watch the Star Trek Next Generation reruns.
Hmm.
It was a different market, and it was one of those, it wasn't ABC, CBS, NBC, one of those, but whatever it was, they would have 2 episodes a day. So I had not been into that until I kind of stumbled upon it.
Right.
It was
So,
kind of
so
just,
so what you're saying is you started watching the show. She was like kind of catching it, sort of, through osmosis, just sort of checking it out there, and
no, she was faking me out. She was a big fan all along. She was pretending that she kind of only sort of knew what it was. So
okay.
many years ago, separately, we each had gotten into Star Trek Next Generation, but she was also a huge Star Wars fan, and as was I. But Star Wars was not this omnipresence in the 99 and 2000 that it is now.
Right, like it still seemed like it was kind of a taboo thing. Like I guess,
Sort of, yeah, like Dungeons and Dragons, but
yeah,
I
like people
more
call it,
mainstream.
yeah, like people call it geek culture now, but it just, I know that there was a time where and I guess maybe this was before the internet was what it was, where it seemed like a lot of that stuff was taboo. Like you couldn't, I mean, people were into it. It's just it wasn't necessarily the cool thing to talk about. There weren't
Right.
as many conventions. There wasn't,
Well, yeah, you
they weren't
definitely
these
didn't go to
huge
a
pop
convention.
culture events.
No, yeah, I mean, like I live in Winter Garden, and between Winter Garden and Windermere, I mean, these are kind of like the stuffy people that would have made fun of you in high school for liking Star Wars.
Right.
These are now the people that are first to call to make sure they get into Star Wars Celebration and all the extra bonus events and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. No. It's it's
So
it's funny how that goes around, and I live in the same town as you do, so it's just I've like only kind of started to notice that a little bit, just because I mean we've only been here like about 2 years or so, but yeah, no, it's funny how you say that.
yeah, it
And it's
was almost taboo. Yeah,
and it's also funny to say how your wife, before she was your wife, when you first met, how even like as a girl, like she would kind of pretend not to be into it.
yeah.
I guess I'm sure it must have been like sort of like a taboo at the time for like a girl to admit that she was into that sort of
Well,
stuff.
not just at the time. In fact, that was one of the things that really I as a fairly new father of a young daughter, um, that was that was one of the things that really endeared me to Star Wars weekends. The Clone Wars actors, specifically Ashley Eckstein, we would go to Star Wars weekends. A little bit. Like we would go there to get the pass holder pin or the vacation club member pin or just to see a couple things. But there were never any celebrities that we were really familiar with. It was largely voice actors, which we didn't know at the time. But then we started looking into when the kids were old enough to appreciate going there. We went, and again, still we didn't recognize any of the names, but we saw some show one year, I think '09, and it was about talking about this Clone Wars that had been going on for a few years. So we got into it, and we really liked it. So we went back in 2010, and Ashley Eckstein and James Arnold Taylor were co-hosting that year.
Hmm.
And one of the things that really endeared me to all that is that her at the time she was starting this new clothing line, Her Universe, and the whole concept of that was
This was Ashley Eckstein starting her own clothing
correct,
line. Okay.
correct. Ashley Eckstein, and that's now more or less she's that she's a clothing line magnate or whatnot.
Oh, okay.
She still does voices. She's still the voice of Ahsoka Tano, who is on Rebels, but
I heard about that. Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
haven't been watching the new Rebel show, but I mean, I watched. I would keep up with the Clone Wars, a couple years ago, and that was a cool show. So yeah, no, I know what you mean.
yeah. But her clothing line was just that. It was that she calls herself a fangirl and into what at the time sounded like a very awkward term, but cosplay. You
Yeah,
know, to me, the word cosplay just sounded kind of, I don't know. I apologize to any cosplayers. It just sounded kind of odd and kinky. It's not.
right, right, right.
It's not that. It's just like adults that like to dress up in costumes, but saying dress up in costumes sounds make kind of demeans it. So
Right. No,
the cosplay, I guess, was the best dance around how to say it.
right. No, I had actually said that word or the word cosplay around Christina one time, my wife, and she was like, and she's and Christina, like, she hadn't even seen Star Wars like before we started dating. Like it took some time to show her all that and get her caught up. It's funny, the girl owns every Disney movie on the planet, but all of a sudden I was a weirdo for liking these things. But whatever.
That's funny. Well, see,
No,
now I never had that to struggle with. Now,
right, no,
get
but
this.
but it's like I was telling her about, like, like the word cosplay and everything, and I had to convince her that was a real thing.
Yeah.
That wasn't a made up word. I'm like, I didn't make that up. I swear, it's a real thing. People do it. A lot of girls do it, and I don't even know if she's convinced to this day. But that's another story.
Well, I didn't have like when I first heard the term, the picture I had in my mind was those things that you hear about where people dress up in furry animal costumes and do like
Right, like it was more of like a sexual deal,
right, like a cuddle party
like a
kind of.
fetish kind of.
Right, right. It does. It sounds very fetishy,
Right,
and it's
you do
not.
and you do get some good looking girls, good looking guys who do that, and obviously they get a lot of attention, but it's not just that.
Well, and and I can't find it. It's much less about looking good or looking hot or looking sexy as it is about feeling like yourself. So I have a cousin that she never used this term, but I've seen for years in her Facebook posts. Most of the ones that show her smiling have her dressed up as an elf, and she can't go to work dressed up as an elf. But to her, she lives in the woods. She lives in a house in like, very wooded, and she just posted something about her. They helped dad move in, and her husband's first thing to do was climb the oak tree. So she like really truly identifies as an elf.
That's interesting. I've got a buddy of mine who I used to work with for a little bit, and his wife designs like fairy like clothing and like accessories and stuff like that. I don't know if it's a necessarily thing that like that she identifies as an elf, but obviously she's like really into that sort of thing and has like sort of made a career out of that. So it's not, so I mean it's interesting sort of the various degrees of fandom necessarily how people immerse themselves into it, but yeah, no, it sounds like this girl might have had like a sort of a similar deal going on.
Kind of. And I mean, it's not like she thinks she's an elf or wants to be an elf, but I mean, like she feels more comfortable in that kind of outfit, almost to a lesser degree than, say, like a transsexual that wants to remain their gender, but wants to dress and look and feel and act like the other because that's how they feel. And so I always kind of thought of it along those lines. But it's really just people that enjoy dressing up in costume. And to be honest, I mean, if there were more masquerade balls other than just on Halloween, I'd be at some of them.
That makes
Uh,
that makes a lot of sense because I mean, I kind of go through this from being in a band. Like I mean, there are things I'll wear on stage that I wouldn't necessarily wear walking down the street.
yeah,
In regular life, walking down this, I'm not necessarily the most fashionable kind of guy. Like I'm more of a jeans and t-shirt kind of guy. Like maybe I'll spike my hair up or like wear an earring every now and then, but that's about it. But I like when I'm on stage, when I'm with the band, I kind of like to dress up a little bit, and that's some of that comes from growing up idolizing bands like Kiss and Motley Crue and stuff like that. Guys who
yeah.
didn't necessarily look like they just walked off the street. And in fact, there have been times where I've even gotten to problems with the guys in the band. They're like, Jack, okay, rein it in a little bit, but I mean, it's all in good fun. But I know what you mean. how it's like things like that can sometimes break through that little wall of self-consciousness. And and I can see how a lot of people might feel more confident dressed in something either that they love or something that they aspire to be. And I can see how something like that would make people feel a little more confident. It's in their own skin, ironically enough, but even though it's something that you wouldn't normally do, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, and to go on to what she did for our family, I feel personally, is that so she extended that to the fact that sci-fi in general, Star Wars specifically, and some others were considered not just geeky but boy. And so, like, what would pass for a girl's Star Wars T-shirt would be a pink Hanes Boys T-shirt with
Right.
Darth Vader's face on it. So she started this line initially with just a couple outfits. There was one that was kind of a hoodie that looked like her character from Clone Wars, Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a T-shirt that said "Daddy's Little Girl," and it was Darth Vader and Princess Leia. But it was a girl's cut shirt,
Right.
and it was this beautiful anime art kind of drawing. So it was clearly a girl's Star Wars shirt, not just a Star Wars logo marketed to the girls department.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, well, that was, I really liked what she was doing with that. And she continued, on with that theme. And on numerous occasions when meeting her there, I told her, I said, as a father of a little girl, I got to say, I really appreciate what you're doing because I fully expect my kids, both of them, to love, and enjoy Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
And you're making it okay for girls to like Star Wars. So, and my wife as a teacher was even more touched because she frequently had kids tease girls that were into Star Wars or Star Trek or something like that. And in fact, there was one story she tells where there was a girl that was teased quite a bit about liking Star Wars. And it didn't matter that she, went through the whole thing about, we're at a Catholic school and blah, 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 and we don't do that and everything. But, they still teased her about it. Well, she reached that girl simply by calling her over to her desk and saying, take a look over here, peek down it. And she showed her lunchbox. And Mary Beth carries a Star Wars lunchbox. Wow. So just the simple fact that it was that meant it was okay. So, and Ashley's doing that on a whole clothing line level. And so we think that's really, really very cool.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it makes all the sense in the world. And, there are so many female fans out there.
Yeah.
And so many like girls that I'm friends with who are into that sort of thing.
Well,
it's ironic that my wife isn't, but it's, it's just one of those things. But I mean, there is a huge female fan base out there, and it seems like it's only been in recent years where it's become more of a chic thing to do. I guess geek chic is, for lack of a better term.
Well, and it's more mainstream, so it's more acceptable. And the latest movie had a powerful female lead, which was
right.
unique for Star Wars or Disney. And that was Ashley's character was one of the first really powerful, both physically and other. But her character in the Clone Wars, I don't know how familiar you are, but she starts as Anakin's apprentice.
That's right. Yeah.
She's kind of a mousy, very young.
Right, but she grows into like a fully.
She grows, emotionally and physically. She's a powerhouse. She's one of the strongest characters in Clone Wars. Definitely. And really started bringing out a line. So it wasn't like. It wasn't just like a formulaic "let's stick a girl in this role" thing. So it was neat, and I would say the same thing about Rey, and I think that helped a lot of little girls. But Disney didn't really do anything different marketing wise. I mean, it's still hard to find Rey toys, and what do you call it? Clone Rebels. It's no different. I have a joke tag once in a while. Where is Hera? Hera's the pilot of the Ghosts, and any set has no Hera. They have Sabine because she's young, sexy, tattooed Sabine with the blue hair. So they have her, but even that, she's always in a, they'll have her as a look at pretty Sabine thing. She's not a key piece of the toy, which is kind of sad, But
Gotcha.
they go on years and years of marketing research for dollars, and they haven't been wrong a lot. So
Yeah. I mean, there's still some work to be done, no doubt. But how old are your kids now, by the way?
they're 8 and 10, about to be 9 and 11.
No, I mean, obviously at that age, it's like they're still kind of discovering who they are. They're certainly going to be at that age where they start getting their own, own interests and their own sort of thing. I mean, obviously, you said you would kind of expected your kids to be into that sort of thing, but have they kind of gravitated toward it naturally, or?
Oh yeah, they pulled us into it.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah,
had no interest in the Clone Wars. In fact, we stumbled upon it accidentally. When Carl was 4, maybe 5. When he was 4, everything was Lightning McQueen.
right.
No, actually, it was around there anyway. I guess Cars came out in '06. Um, Starting the Pixar on my birthday tradition. It was delayed. It was supposed to be out in December '05, but it was pushed back to uh, mid to late June '06. Cars was, and from that point on, every year on or around my birthday, June 22nd, uh, Pixar puts out their new annual movie, and we go see it. That's our tradition. But they they were at the age that we wanted to get them into Star Wars,
Hmm.
but I was only interested in the movies really. And what
Right.
sparked it was that one of the cable channels must have bought the rights to it for a week or something because they were running it ad infinitum on all of the sub channels. So I forget which one it was, but it was like
Well, I
real.
remember Spike TV ran them for quite a while.
Yeah, I think
Almost
that
the
might have
original
been it.
six. So, but yeah,
But
no, I mean, you bring up a good point. Like Clone Wars became such a huge thing with kids. I mean, now Star Wars is just a multi-generational thing.
yeah.
But I mean, I guess that was my question. Obviously, it's something they grew to discover on their own. It wasn't like you were pushing them to like it or forcing them to.
Oh
Obviously,
no, no.
because it's like the minute you do that, then that's when the kids are going to want to do something else. You know how that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm a fan of Clone Wars and of some of these personalities specifically because of what they've done for my kids and that my kid, you know, Ashley had a few very significant moments with my daughter at Disney.
Oh yeah.
Well, like for one, there she Amory was just realizing, kind of like just old enough to watch TV and see people, and Ashley had done some show, and it was one of those audience participation where you can ask a question, and there's 1,000 people out there, so 1, 2 people get called on. But anyway, so I guess Anne-Marie had waved to Ashley on stage, one of the 1,000 people, and said something about where she was disappointed that she didn't think Ashley saw her or waved back or something
Hmm.
like that. But whatever it was, that year was the first year she was hosting, so she was doing a show, and then she would run to a signing out in the park, and then she would run back to another show, and then she would run back to Dart's Mall to do a signing in the retail store, and then back to another show, and then to the parade. So she was running everywhere, Ashley. So there was no, shuttle the celebrity behind the scenes. She was running across the streets,
Right.
and she was running down the street, and Anne Marie waved, and she was like said something like, "I don't think she saw me." Well, so she stopped mid stride and kind of turned back, came back, and got down on her knees and blew Anne Marie a kiss. And at that moment, Anne Marie became literally part of the world of Star Wars.
Wow.
She knew that was Ahsoka, and Ahsoka from TV and the Clone Wars and the TV shows and on stage at Disney stopped to recognize her, and
That's
she
so cool.
remembers that to this day.
Have you ever gotten to do like a meet and greet with her, or like actually introduce your daughter to Ashley, or
Oh yeah,
was
several
that the only?
times, several
Oh,
times.
okay.
Yeah, at the signings there, and it's kind of, it's a little narcissistic to say that she remembers us or knows us, but she kind of seems to like
Yeah.
it's over now, but I've seen her a couple times there, and she'll say something like, "Oh, well, where's your son?" Because I'm just with my daughter, or something like that.
Oh wow.
And, you get that a lot of that is showmanship, but she, remembers details of previous.
Still though, I mean that's obviously. I mean, obviously you made some kind of impression
Yeah,
because, I mean, like, I doubt that's not like a canned thing she could say
right,
because it's like, what if he didn't have a son? Then it's like, then that
right, right, right.
I don't think she would do that. So, I mean, that's pretty rad that she actually, actually had that much of a memory of you guys because she probably meets like a ton of people all
Oh
the
my
time.
God, I'm sure. Yeah, and I mean, yeah, we were there each year for 6 years, but like once, and we were one of the people there. Um, but yeah, it's I guess like anything else. You see somebody enough times, and you don't necessarily remember where you remember them from, but you remember them. But that's kind of evident in the one video I posted real quick on missing Star Wars weekends introduction on my blog. I wanted to put something up that was about Star Wars weekends and about her, and she was one of the ones that touched us the most. And you can tell when I went there the last year that it went on, I decided to pay for that extra thing the day before called Galactic Gatherings. And she was the one host or the one guest that was going to be there to meet. And I had to pick the kids up, so I got in line early. And I had just gotten all this new broadcast video equipment and was fumbling around with how to use it. And but you can tell as I walk up at the start of the video that she knows who I am, like because she says something, I forget exactly, but it's something like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" And then we go into the interview part of the interview. So, um, but we've had several conversations, and she definitely remembers my kids at least when she sees them. But she's done stuff like one year she and D Baker, the one that touched my son, and
Hmm.
he too. I don't know that he would remember us per se, but D, every video I have of him meeting Carl in line, there's nothing fake about him. So Carl would
Wow.
ask something, and he would come out from around the booth and get down to Carl's level and have a conversation with him. And Carl would ask him one time about how do you do the different voices, and he didn't give him a flip, "You're a 5-year-old" answer.
Right.
He gave him what he would give an interviewer on stage, and he explained to him that, well, they have different marks for since he plays
Hmm.
all the clones, and
Right.
they have
Yeah.
different marks.
By the way, anyone who's listening who's not familiar, D. Bradley Baker is the name of the voice actor he's talking about. He plays all the clone troopers on, or at least he played all the clone troopers on the Clone Wars. He's also done a lot of other things outside of that, like he's the voice of Klaus the fish on American Dad, and he's done a bunch of other things as well.
He's Perry the Platypus. He does a lot
Oh,
of
is he really? Oh,
yeah.
okay.
He's most famous actually for his non verbal voice acting. So he does like forest sounds or animal noises or and
Gotcha. Because
the
I think I had seen like Phineas and Ferb only one time with my cousin's kids, and I didn't think Perry talked, so that I was wondering how that worked.
he does like a platypus cluck kind of a thing.
Gotcha.
It's not easy to mimic, but he does. But he was also the voice of the two creatures on Last Airbender. And but yeah, he does a lot of stuff. But he's a heck of a guy. He also has a blog that people should check out too. One, if you're interested in voice acting at all,
Hmm.
check out James Arnold Taylor, of course, but also D. Bradley Baker. And I've always wanted to interview him. However, I'm intimidated by the simple fact of his website because one of the things that you see on a Q&A is before asking me for an interview, here are all the questions. And and it's nice, but I get it. He probably gets lots of calls. He probably gets all the same questions. And so he laid them out. These are the questions I get, and these are the answers. And then at the very end, if you get to the bottom of it, it's now if there's something else, then please ask me. But he also did a blog about parenting, and honestly, I was more a fan of how he was to our kids, and specifically to my son, from the very first time. But also living here, I talked to a lot of cast members, and the cast members every one of them had a story about how between shows Dee was entertaining the cast behind the scenes, or he was doing this other thing to help them out, or he seems like one of those real prince of a guy, real nice guy,
Definitely, definitely.
and he's Carl's. Carl likes Rex. The name's Rex, but you can call me Captain or Sir.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I love it. It's interesting that you mentioned all the stuff about voice acting. That's something I've actually been interested in for a while. So I'll definitely be checking out his website. But and this is kind of a long setup. I know that we've been talking about this a lot, but obviously meeting these people like Ashley Eckstein, like D. Bradley Baker, was that what kind of inspired you to do blogging of your own and to make your own website?
Sort of. It was James Arnold Taylor, and I actually got to tell him this a couple weeks ago when I was press at MegaCon. But kind of like you were saying about how Star Wars, it was kind of geeky and kind of it was not mainstream, and how now kind of it's acceptable and all that. Well, it was kind of like that for me in life in general. I was born in a family of a businessman, and that was just always what we were supposed to do. You go to school until you're out of school, and then you go into business.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always creative, and it was always kind of looked down on, like, yeah, those are cute, cute, funny pictures, but that doesn't make money. You go into business. But, early on, I had all these opportunities. We grew up in a very nice part of the Chicago suburbs, town called Highland Park, but specifically part of it called Ravinia Woods.
Mm-hmm.
And so when it was career day at the school, it wasn't, the local tradesman. It was the guy that ran ABC downtown, or the guy that wrote for Hanna-Barbera and stuff like that. And so those were two specific things from my first grade, I think it was, class field trip and stuff. But so somebody from Hanna-Barbera came to first grade, and they started talking about the animated cells, and how they move, and how you can make something move with just one kind of set background, and then the majority of the character is actually a flat picture, and then they really only redraw, let's say, the legs at this point and the arms at that. And I was fascinated with that stuff. And I was always very artistic. I was always very bright too, but most of the stuff, bored me.
Mm-hmm.
So I always leaned towards that, and I was always kicked away from it. And on into, high school, I wanted to get into graphic arts and things like that. I got the closest I got into that was they had mechanical drawing, and then architectural drafting were some classes in Loyola Academy High School. And, and so I kind of always followed whatever was the closest business thing to something creative. So for a while that was hotel restaurant management, but that was really not creative,
Yeah.
And then it was other things, and then when I was going to community college again for business, there was a strike at the Barbara B. Mann Performing Arts Center, and we were the only fraternity. It was a non-national fraternity. It was a community college, but it was a community college of 11,000 students,
Mm-hmm.
with a higher doctor to student ratio of teachers than most of the state colleges. So it was a very good one. It's now Florida Gulf Coast University. It was, at the time, it was Edison Community College.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so they went on strike, and one of the guys that was a fraternity brother worked in the hall, and it was a David Copperfield show, and there was no way to get more labor. So they said, well, does anyone know 20 guys that can come in and work tomorrow morning? And the one guy said, yeah, hold on. And he ran and got us. And so we all pitched in. Only a couple of us stuck with event production, but it was really fascinating to me. It was that world that I had always thought of when I was younger, but it was not for me. So we did the David Copperfield show, and it was the first time I did event production. It was really pretty cool. It was a lot of fun, and so it was just somebody that worked there, union strike, they needed help that day, so all of us came in. A couple of us, though, kept doing it, and we did it for other things in and around Florida, concert and event production, sometimes plays at the Barbara B. Mann, sometimes just a concert somewhere at what used to be called the Barn at Lee Civic Center or other places, and it was pretty cool. Even the industrial gigs, I found that I really enjoyed learning some stuff about it. Like the concerts were cool. I mean, like I was actually on stage with Pink Floyd when they were rehearsing for the very first Division Bell tour.
Oh wow!
The first tour since they split up. So Roger Waters wasn't there, but
Right. You still had Gilmore and Wright and Mason.
right. And like I thought it was the guitar techs that were on stage, so I was just hanging out in the back. We were on the call, but we were kind of done. We had teched out the show, which is what they do the first time the show's ever put together.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, it was the largest touring rock concert ever. In fact, the Stones bought the steel from them. The steel is the big structure that everything else more or less hangs off of. And
Right, like the lighting rig and stuff. Yeah.
well, I mean, it was the steel structure that's put together by cranes. So, like normally you would just put together these aluminum pipes, more or less, and you hang the lights off of those. This was a much bigger thing.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, that one was so big that they couldn't put it in the end zone. Normally, of course, for maximum seating, you'd put the stage in the end zone so that you can get the bigger part of a football field view.
Oh, so these were stadium shows then?
This was a Joe Robbie stadium in Miami.
Oh wow!
Which seats what 60, 70,000 people.
Yeah.
And but the stage set was so wide it wouldn't fit sideways. It wouldn't fit in the end zone. You had to put it along one of the sidelines.
Wow.
So it was unbelievable. And there were just these massive towers out all throughout the stadium. And there were two huge towers that had these inflatable pigs that came out, the flying pigs. But it was just kind of neat. So I was there, and then somebody called on the radio, said you're off. So I walked off the stage and around the front of the stage, and I look up, and that was David Gilmour, and he looks down at me and kind of one of those smile, wave, nod things, like yes, it's me. Keep moving, and but it was neat. And then they too, by the way, just a plug for them. They are the most magnanimous people in music to work for I have ever worked for before.
The guys from Pink Floyd.
They feed and water their crew, local crew, any crew, like nobody's business.
Wow.
I didn't understand why they were wheeling what looked like a refrigerator out onto the field one morning, and it was not a refrigerator, it was a freezer, and it was a freezer filled to the top with popsicles. There were, of course, cases of water. They would bring out a bushel of bananas that I also didn't understand what that was all about. But because your joints, so you're working out in, Joe Robbie Stadium in Florida in the summer.
Oh my God!
And
yeah,
so,
I mean, so they must understand how hard the crew would be working for a show like that. So
right,
yeah,
but they're from England. I mean, George Strait doesn't do that.
Wow.
He's from the South, and there's people that would, and he was one that I worked for too, and he didn't even feed and water his own crew. In fact, he wouldn't let them leave the stadium to go get food because they might need them. Yeah. And but Pink Floyd was just they were just unbelievable. But the other unbelievable thing they do is largely for themselves. They have such an elaborate show that before each concert, let's say they're doing 3 days in Miami. Well, so if the show is Thursday or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, on Thursday, the night before the crowd comes to pay, they do a full show, pyro and everything, to an essentially empty stadium.
Just basically like a dress rehearsal.
Right. But they invite the entire crew. Anybody that was local crew that worked there, if you're off that day, you get to sit on the grass like 20 feet from the stage while they do this.
Oh, that's amazing.
Unbelievable.
That's pretty rad.
I don't know if they can still do that in the age of Periscope and YouTube.
Right.
But back then they did, and I was ticked because I missed it because I had to go back over to Naples for an industrial gig for Lancome, which was probably one of the most boring ones I did. Yeah. So that started me on finding things like that. And then I thought, if it's got to be business, it should be something interesting. So I really got into marketing.
You mentioned all these different experiences, obviously wanting to be creative, being able to use that and your marketing background. So where does familyfather.com fit into all this? Like how did that all come about?
Well, so fast forward with one quick pause, what my revelation and what changed all this and what got me on the road to doing this family father thing was I've always had uh, websites. I never knew what company I'd want, but in the early 90s when the internet went graphic, I knew I wanted to grab a website. So I used my name, kjohnson.com.
Mm-hmm.
So I've done a couple little things over there when I've, had little side businesses. I've played around with that. And then in the last few years, I got into 3D printing. And so I started something, clonecrafting.com, and wanted to get the kids involved. So I got, them some websites, but really never did anything with it. And, I kind of changed gears, about 6 years ago at Star Wars Weekends in this James Arnold Taylor show. So I was always doing something that I enjoyed, something I liked, that was also somewhat business-y. And at the time, it was eBay. So I thought, because uh, I'm in a fortunate situation where I'm the stay-at-home dad, and I have some investment income. It's enough that I can do anything I want, not so much I can do nothing. So over the years, I do, it was event production for a while, then that got inconvenient because of the kids getting older, and so then it became eBay. And it was also a way to live out my childhood. I would buy and sell rare toys,
Mm-hmm.
things that I might want to play with, but wouldn't want to spend that much money on. So I would,
Right.
find the deals and get them, and I would get two of them and sell one and keep one for myself. And sometimes I would strike it gold, but at the very worst, I always made at least what I paid. I never lost on any individual item, and I always made enough, a few hundred extra a month, enough to play around with and whatnot. Well, so I was one of my moneymakers was each year Star Wars Weekends. It started with pins, and then it was Vinymations, and then eventually I had people emailing me orders and letting me know when Star Wars Weekends was coming up, and that they had a catalog with all these, and get me item number 17 from page 6, and get me this with this name on it. So I was kind of like a personal shopper, sort of.
Oh yeah,
So
and being near Disney, obviously being in the Orlando area, this is like the mecca for all that because you always
right,
get like merchandise that'll be there just exclusively at the parks that you can't get anywhere else. I
right.
mean, of course you can get everything online now, but even before that, it was still like it was
Well,
even
and
that
you
much.
couldn't before,
Right.
but yeah. So I would go down to these things, and so I had the kids to take to school first. So then by the time I got there, it was already open. There was already a line. So I thought, well, I'll go catch this show. So it was this new show called Talking to Myself, and it was James Arnold Taylor.
Hmm.
And so he started talking about his childhood, and I thought, well, that sounds a lot like me, and about how he acted and how he came up with these characters. And I'm like, wow, he's he's talking about me. Like I was that guy. And so he's going on and on and on, and then he gets to high school, and up until that point, that was me. And then he decided to follow that dream and follow that career, and had the support of his family, and he went on, and he actually um, started doing radio, and then started got some voice acting jobs, and eventually, was what we see now. And his show was neat and informative, but it was also very inspirational because he talked about how at one point he had bought a new house, and he had adopted a daughter, and he got this mold in the house, and he got sick, and he lost his voice, and that was his bread and butter. That's all I mean, whether it was voice acting or even back to radio sidekick kind of thing, he needed a voice.
Yeah, I mean
And
that's his gig right there.
right. And I mean, forget about voice quality. He had no voice. And he talks about, but then he also then talks about fame and how fleeting, and if you're going to do this, do it because you love it, do it because it's whatever. It's not easy. Don't expect to be the top and all that stuff, and just do it because you like it. And I thought, I used to do voices all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just with my friends and stuff. And it didn't hit me until sitting in that show. Like, I had stopped doing that at some point. At some point, my son was saying, "Oh, don't do that. That sounds goofy." And so I stopped because that was just additional ammo to the adults don't do this kind of thing.
Right,
And I thought, you know what? That's ridiculous. That is nonsense. I'm 40 years old and I'm somewhat miserable. What this guy's doing is what I want to do. Not necessarily being on stage at Disney, but like everything else he talks, like, I don't care if I get a job doing some famous cartoon. I want to be able to do voices when I'm at school with my kid.
right,
And
right.
I want to play with Legos.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, so forget it. I am not living for other people's expectations anymore. And I did go pick up all my stuff from eBay, but then I went home and I started thinking, well, what else, what else can I do? And I was already room parent at my son's school, and so I started doing the voices again. And initially, he was a little, "Oh, Dad, you sound funny," but by field day, he was running up to me going, "Dad, my friend wants to hear Goofy," or "Dad, oh, can you do Rex?" And I thought, this is it. This is the life, and I want to get paid for it.
Nice,
It
nice.
wasn't a career.
Now
It was just
keep in
I
mind
got.
though when hits those teenage years, he might not be as excited to hear that.
That's right. That's right. And but so I thought, I got to start doing this stuff for me, and this kind of thing, you know, it was leading up, and I kept doing the eBay a little, but my heart wasn't in it, and so I started doing more and more videos, more and more internet stuff, and getting involved in a variety of things, and then with 3D printing. All throughout this, though, looked for any and every opportunity to teach the kids things that they don't learn in school. So we'll stop by historic sites on our way to a wedding, or we'll show them something on the Discovery Channel that maybe most parents would think is too old for them to know about, or explain things on the news. And so we like to educate the kids on what's going on. We don't throw horrors in their face per se, or tell them things that are inappropriate, but we like to teach them about the realities of stuff. So I liked that they were learning that the voices on their cartoons are people that have jobs,
Hmm.
that also do commercials, and that is at times as boring and mundane a job as working at McDonald's,
Sure.
because they're just, and he talks a little bit about that. And so it was really pretty cool. So I thought, I've often thought about doing some kind of blog about things. That kind of came around from just the fact that living here and going there, we've had annual passes to Disney before my wife and I met. So we've always gone at will, and we go for a lot of the festivals and a lot of the neat things. We're there anyway. And we have stayed at many of the hotels, eaten at most of the restaurants. We're some of the first ones to see the new fireworks or the new ride or whatever. And people are always asking us. We have family that lives up north, both of us, and family and friends alike. They're, "Oh, I'm coming to Orlando. What should I do at this place? What should I do at that place?" And we thought, we have some go-to advice, some things that people wouldn't know about, some tips and tricks and secrets and stuff. So we thought we'd throw kind of all of this stuff together, and try to think, what does it all amount to? We're into Star Wars, we're into toys, we're into the kids, we're into the, learning about the schools and the politics of the state, and the economy of the area, and the best restaurants, and the place to take your car and to be fixed. And it was really like a notion that didn't have a thing. Like, there was no such thing as blog 10 years ago. Or if there was, it was very unknown. So it kind of just seemed like a natural thing. And I thought, the term family man doesn't really apply to me exactly, because when I hear family man, I think the more traditional patriarch of the 50s,
Yeah, you think like Ward Cleaver or something.
right, yeah, come home from work, where's my dinner? Hello, kids,
Right.
you know,
Or like Darren from Bewitched or something.
yeah, yeah, somebody but that is most people's idea of what it is to be a father is,
Sure.
oh, I'm a great dad. I work all my life, all my days and nights so that they can live in a nicer house. Okay, well, that's nice, but that's not great dad. I mean that's not the end all and be all of great dad. Like,
Right.
and then, but just calling myself or my blog site something about father, that doesn't fit either because I'm not just a father. Yes, my kids are the most important thing, but my wife is as well. And for me, family is cousins, my grandparents, my wife's parents, her cousins, friends of the family that we call cousin because their parents grew up close to my parents, So, you know, family father kind of just seemed to fit and was one of those names that sounds like something you already heard and amazingly as of last month was not taken yet. And so family father it is. And it's a website with some news, some reviews, some insights, some columns. Um, I had been writing for Star Wars Reporter .com, which is a really neat Star Wars site. It's all things Star Wars. But
Is that sanctioned at all by Lucasfilm, or is that just strictly a fan site?
it's funny you bring that up. That was actually some of the issue that caused me to start my own. It is not sanctioned, and we had a logo that I couldn't get printed on a business card, which was requested to be press. That I have a business card with the logo on it. Well, nobody would print it because the Star Wars logo, the Star Wars name, and the logo was an X-wing type plane and stuff. And I had thought that we had the logo changed, but it turned out they had changed the logo so that it didn't infringe on another fan site called Star Wars Report without the it had not passed anything by Lucasfilms or Disney, so I kind of said to the guys that this is our first press we've been talking about getting on, as official press. This is kind of a big thing. I mean, if our name and logo inevitably can't be used and we have to come up with a new one, we should do that now. But it's kind of one of those things where Disney and Star Wars have always been kind of funny this way. They ignore it unless they want to. So lots of people have written and drawn Star Wars related things, and Lucasfilm and Disney does not go after everybody that's got fan art of something from the Star Wars world. Star Trek seems to more than Star Wars. That said, we could never make, not to mention sell, T-shirts that said StarWarsReporter.com.
Sure.
And which was a similar conversation I had with Enable. I've been involved with Enable, the 3D printing prosthetics for kids, for a while, and had several conversations with members of the board there that we could use our own superheroes, because right now Marvel and the others, they have no problem with us making, let's say, a Spider-Man or a Captain America themed hand. However, even though it's not a commercial product, we give the hands away. We make them on our own dime and we give them away.
Sure.
But to promote Enable, the company that needs to send people to locations, that needs to research things, that hopefully eventually will do things like offer filament to these builders that are making all these hands. But to do that, they need funds, and to do that, they need a product. And again, we couldn't even sell a T-shirt that had a picture of a kid wearing a Captain America hand. We could make a hand for free.
Well, yeah, because then you run into copyright issues and all this other
Right,
stuff.
right,
If you're making money off of that copyrighted property, then you can't do that. Yeah.
right. So a year ago, we came up with some. Me and an ex Marvel artist came up with some enable superheroes, but it it didn't die a political death, but it was shelved on a political closet somewhere. So hopefully someday we'll be going back to that. If not, maybe it's something I'll do on my own. But
Maybe like creating some original characters or something like
we
that.
did. We
Or
created. We created an original. Me, there's a guy named Pedro, and that Melina from Enable met down in Ecuador, I think.
yeah.
He was working with Enable down there, and he happened to be an ex Marvel artist, and she was telling him about me, who I'm not an artist, but I was writing some stories for it, and so he and I talked for a while, and he came up with some pretty amazing characters that were cool, and we had the beginnings of a backstory, and I was working up the nerve to start poking people like some other comic book artists and such to get it going. But it's a bigger undertaking than even I.
Nice, nice. You might have to put me into contact with this guy. Maybe I'll try and get some designs of my own sent his way. Maybe something involving the band. Who knows? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Well, there's probably a different route. Now that I did the MegaCon, there's just a slew of talented artists locally,
True, true.
and he was hard to catch on a good time, and now I guess he had some personal family issues that sidelined him, even if he had wanted to be able to jump back in with us. but but anyway, so I had all these various things, and none of which had their own centralized outlet, and so that's where I came up with Family Father. So it's right now very new, very lightly populated. I'll be adding things like some of our. Right now, there's just a few kind of starter stories.
All right,
Some
so you're still basically in sort of like almost like the beta testing mode, for lack
very,
of a better term.
very much so.
But what I mean, what would you say is most of your content right now as we're speaking?
Well, right now we've got some stories about Disney. I've got one I wrote there before the grace of God go I, talking about the tragedy at Disney with the 2-year-old at the beach.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I can tell you that my family and kids at that age, even once at night, have been in those waters. I've lived in Florida for 30 years almost. No, 20, 25 years or so. I am fully aware. I'm not from Nebraska thinking this is a Disney set.
Right.
I know full well there are alligators in there. I've seen them. In fact, I looked, and I'm surprised I couldn't find pictures. Well, I found a couple of pictures, but couldn't find any video of them. But I know they're in
But
there.
still, that I mean, that's got. I mean, as a dad, that's got to be just
I can't.
terrifying to
I
think.
can't imagine. I can't imagine. I can't.
Especially if, like you said, like if your kids have gone swimming in those waters before, then it's obviously that's got to be in the back of your mind after hearing this, because it's like, oh man,
I got to say, Jack, I can't imagine getting out of that water without my son.
yeah, it's just, yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, but
I
still,
mean, thank God he did, but I mean, because he's got another child too, a daughter, and a wife and other people that love him. But I mean, and it wasn't like a sleep at the switch. I mean, he's got scars from the freaking gator. I mean, he was there. He fought. He tried. He lost. And I mean, a full-grown man cannot beat a 5-foot gator.
right,
So if this was anything above a gator puppy,
mm-hmm.
it was over. It was no chance. And I can't even imagine. So I wrote something about that, and it's one of those things. I don't think there's an easy answer. It was not the parents' fault, as many people wanted to blame initially. It wasn't even Disney's fault. I do agree that maybe they could have had beware the wildlife signs, but I mean, there hasn't been a gator attack. There hasn't been a gator walk up on the beach kind of a thing.
Right,
So there's nobody currently working those positions at Disney that would have any reason to believe that gator attack was possible or imminent. Now I
Right. I
did.
mean, I'm sure if they had anticipated something like that, they would have done something, obviously. But I mean,
Of
it's like you
course.
said, you're still out there in nature. Yes, it's a controlled environment, but obviously, it's Florida.
Yeah.
There are gonna be gators around. You can't keep all of them out. You can't kill them all. It's gonna be what it is. So
Yeah.
it's just an unfortunate thing all the way around. I don't think it's like you said. I don't think it's really anyone's fault. It's just a really tragic, unfortunate accident, and
Yeah.
hopefully it won't happen again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's sad that I saw them putting up some really ugly cyclone fences all on the sand part of the beach. Maybe they'll plant some bushes. You know, I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, they have to overreact. Probably they should have always had beware the wildlife signs, but it's I get it. Like you look at that and you're thinking Disney set, but it's wilderness. I mean, it's marsh and swamp.
Yeah.
It always has been, and so I don't know. But so there's that one, and then there was one. The probably the most recent one was the PayPal eBay being hacked. So sometimes I'll throw up breaking news of something that I find out about. I found out anybody that was involved with Giving Works through eBay. So if you sell on eBay, you have the option of donating a portion of your sale to a charity. They do that through a program called Giving Works, and it's paid by PayPal. That was all smooth and easy when that was one company, but PayPal separated a while back. And recently, somebody hacked into that database. So on my birthday, I saw a couple things saying you just paid such and such amount to eBay Giving Works. And I knew I hadn't sold anything in months, and I knew I hadn't said anything on donation in a year or more. But it turned out it was a hack. It was a hack that both of them knew about and was still ongoing. And they were starting to tell me to go file this form on this site and blah, blah, blah. So I
Hmm.
just stayed on the phone and I said, no, look, I've got both of you on the phone right now, both representatives from both companies telling me on a recorded thing that you both know that this is a hack. So I'm not filling out anything. I put my money back.
Mm.
And that's,
So it's almost like an expose kind of you're doing on the organization, just making sure everything is on the up and up.
well, sort of, but that one was more like this is happening now, and
Mm.
they know about it and have not yet stopped it.
Mm.
So look at your pay because on a normal month I would not have noticed. I would have been like, oh, okay, I paid $4.80 to eBay Giving Works because I sold something last month. I wouldn't think twice about it. Or if I didn't have notifications on, I wouldn't be looking through my bank account to see a $5 charge and a $12 charge from a month ago.
Right.
You wouldn't even know. So I put it up there so that, but most of it is stuff like kind of. I was just kind of getting the ball rolling on things. So for example, I put missing Star Wars weekends introduction. It's just a quick thing about Star Wars weekends, and then one called More Daniel. That was a couple of videos of myself and the kids interviewing Daniel Logan that played young Boba Fett.
Yeah, he was
So
in Attack of the Clones.
yeah, neat guy, very very cool guy. And then the one was a column on business that my dad wrote for Father's Day for me. One was a video I threw together for William Shatner's charity. I got to see him as one of the headliners at MegaCon, and as press got to load with the VIPs, so I was 10th row center. Would have even been closer, but I was holding off in the back talking to somebody to see if I could set up a tripod in the back. But so I filmed some of him and was really surprised by everything I heard from him, really. So these are some of the kinds of things I wanted to talk about. So like on my blog. So for example, that one, it's a 10-minute video of him at MegaCon talking about what he's really truly passionate about, most passionate about. And it turns out it's horses. And
Oh.
and almost 30 years ago, he started a charity called horseshow.org. and he gets celebrities to compete in the celebrity horse show. But he's a competitive rider, and he talks about reining and what reining means, and um, how you go through the competition. And but it was really very interesting, and a side of him I would have never known. But it makes sense now if you go back and think about some of the Star Trek movies. He's on a horse, and that was his input into that. Because he's a very good writer. Then another story next to that is Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes. It's an iPad game about Star Wars, and just my kind of first blush takes on it and stuff. So we want to populate this with a lot more reviews of the area hotels and restaurants, but also with things that parents want to know about. So, for example, and this also started for the last couple of years, we're trying to think of a way to monetize filming things and being on YouTube. And it's become so easy now to have your own channel that the production of it is no longer the stumbling block. It used to be that just getting your hands on a camera and being able to afford to expose film was what stopped people from making movies. Now, forget about iPhone. Any phone has a camera that's usually at least HD, and since YouTube dumbs down to 720 anyway, this broadcast quality camera I've got, it helps me in certain situations, but it's mostly unnecessary if you're lit right. And so then the thing is, well, so why go to you for your Minecraft video? Why go to you for your unboxing video? Right. And so I wanted to do some unboxings, so I started doing filming some, and lo and behold, the companies start coming out with them. So I'm buying all the Infinity characters and going through the things and editing in iMovie because that's all I had to work with at the time. And long before I'm ready to post anything to my little YouTube channel, Disney posts their unboxing video of characters that aren't out yet.
Gotcha.
And I thought, okay, but on ours, we will go back over and we'll do not so much unboxing, but playthroughs. So, for example, one of the things that frustrated me as a parent is when I first saw Skylanders, I thought, oh, no. I'm not keen on a $65 game. But a $65 game that has 70 $15 characters that go with it, plus accessories, are you kidding me? That's hundreds of dollars for Skylanders. That was my first thought. 2 years later, we had over 100 Skylanders figures.
Well, there you go.
But I justified it by buying them in bulk and selling the X's on eBay, and it worked, and it was fun. But one of the things that frustrated me is you can tell if a character looks cool, but sometimes you'd buy one that was really cool and really rare and really special, and they stunk in the game. They were either awkward, hard to use, or had a bad specialty or whatever. So I'm going to go back and show things like the different Infinity characters, what they do, what their, what the different games are. Kind of try to make sense of it. Now, it seems a little passé because Disney has announced that Infinity is over. Two things. One, there's a lot of Infinity left to play, and there's a lot of toys still out there left to buy, and a lot of people that still have it. It's not even a 3-year-old game yet.
Yeah, I had heard that game was coming to a close because they were going to put out a Doctor Strange, figure for that, but that ended up getting discontinued.
Yeah, the last ones came out. Finding Dory was the last set out. They announced April or May that they were ending the whole thing. I wrote an article for Star Wars Reporter on that too. It was horrible. They just shut the doors. Hundreds of people out of work.
Gosh.
But all the people at Avalanche, they created a company, Avalanche, to make this game. And I love Disney, but I've been saying this since I saw this. I don't think it's over. So what Disney, and this is something I'll write about too on the blog, but just for now, what it was there wasn't, first they announced there was going to be no Disney Infinity 4. they weren't quite ready on the latest version of it that would have come out in August or September. So there wasn't going to be a Disney Infinity 4. They decided to go with downloadable content. So just like Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront, another game that it was a $60, $70 game in the fall, and then starting a few months back, just a couple days ago, they released the second one. They have this thing called a DLC, so you can buy. I think the first one, I'm blanking on it now, but the current one was Bespin. They just came out with a new Bespin. So there's new heroes for the game. There's new weapons for the game.
Just a whole new level, new board,
Right.
the whole deal.
Right, and it's $15. So it's not $60 for a whole new game. If you like Bespin, it's $15. If you
It's like an extension pack, kind of.
right, and if you don't like it, the next one out is Death Star. I'm sure that one's going to break records on DLCs. Well, so they were going to do the same thing, DLCs. And the first one they came out with, then they were going to do instead of Infinity 4, they were going to do 4 DLCs. They had committed. They said there was going to be one Marvel one Star Wars one Pixar one, and then one to be determined. So the Marvel one was something called Marvel Battlefronts. And the cool thing about it is it's a playset piece that works on the newest, the Infinity 3.0, for the Marvel characters. And it comes with the new Captain America from the new movie. But what's really good about it is it's the first playset piece that allows you to let other characters play in it. So one of the big disappointments about Infinity is you believed at the start that the different characters could play the different games. So when Infinity 1.0 was released, it had one game piece that had 3 games. It had Pirates, it had Incredibles, and it had Monsters from Monsters Inc. and Monsters University.
Nice.
So, and they had characters that went with each of those. So you thought, and from the commercials, you saw Jack Sparrow with Sully from Monsters. Well, that's only in the toy box. So when you're playing the Pirates of the Caribbean game, you can only use the 3 Pirates of the Caribbean figures that are available for that game. So it's Jack Sparrow, Barbossa, and then the bad guy was, what's his face? The guy with the claw hand and the octopus face.
Davy Jones?
There you go. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you couldn't actually play the Pirates game with Sully or with Mr. Incredible. And you couldn't play the Incredibles game with Jack Sparrow. You could only play with the 5 Incredibles figures. So that was one thing that they were supposed to change.
I remember seeing one commercial there where it was like you had both Johnny Depp characters. You had Jack Sparrow interacting with Tonto.
Right. Which you can't do. You can do in the toy box, but you can't do in the game. Right. So it came out with those. So, and the other thing was that you can't use the old playset pieces. So in Infinity 2.0, which was the Marvel superheroes, you can't use your old playsets. So if you only bought 2, and then you went out and bought the Cars playset from 1, you could put those figures on there, and you could see those figures in your toy box. You could not, however, play the Cars game on Infinity 2. Right. And you couldn't play the Cars game on Infinity 3. And again, on Infinity 3, you could only use the characters in the toy box. Well, Marvel Battlegrounds changed that. It was a new Marvel's game that worked on 3.0, and you could play in that game with any character that was a Marvel character from 2.0. I don't think there were Marvel characters in 1.0, but you get the idea. So then when the one for Pixar came, whatever it would have been, you would then be able to play in that game with all the previous 1.0 and 2.0 Pixar characters. And within weeks of announcing that structure, it was like dominoes. They had just released a gamepad and version of the game for Apple TV. And like a week after the grand announcement of that, they announced that they were no longer supporting Apple TV The next week, no longer supporting the computer. The next week, we're ending Disney Infinity. Period.
Wow.
The last figures will be from Alice Through the Looking Glass, and the last playset will be Finding Dory in June. That's it. Company's over. It's gone. And I wondered about the cards. Each figure came with a card that had a code on it that you could go to the web and get some additional something from. And I wondered how long those would be supported. Well, I didn't have to wonder, because those last playset pieces that were too far in the production line to just completely scrap, they don't even have the cards.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already over. So, but there were some suggestions I had for people that have a lot invested in this. Because again, it was a $60 game or more. Actually, $75 was the full price. And it had each year, 1, 2, and 3 had, I don't know, conservatively probably 30, 40 characters at $15 a pop. So, what's going to be, can you keep playing the game? And whatever, but at the very least, there's not going to be support. So I suggested to people that, if you have it on Wii, go down to GameStop right now, buy another copy of the disc. They're about $3.
There you go. There you go.
And
I mean,
go buy another gamepad. They're $5 at GameStop.
Exactly. Keith, I mean, there's so much information, so much good stuff you have on the website. And again, I'm sure we could talk for hours and hours and hours about it, but this is really good stuff. So I definitely want to give you a chance to sort of plug your social media and everything. For one thing, you're still writing for StarWarsReporter.com?
Well, I haven't heard back from them since submitting my halftime report at MegaCon.
Gotcha.
Nothing posted and nothing back. So I'm going to guess no.
All right. Well, I mean, you're still submitting stuff there.
I'm still friends with some of the guys. And
right.
No, I stopped submitting when I heard crickets a few times.
Gotcha.
But and when they stopped even liking things of mine on Twitter. But it was a different pace. But I still they're all incredibly talented people. Every one of them. It's a really neat bunch. They're contributing authors. The guys that started it, one's a published science fiction author. One helped start, I think, Legendarium. Mm-hmm. One guy works for Fantasy Flight Games, making the miniatures games, and one is working on some of the video games. So they're all very in the know people, and they do a lot of. It's more liking and following and friending things on Twitter. They're a lot more active on their Instagram and Twitter than they are on actual articles. But when they spot something that's, they're some of the first to hear about things that are news on Twitter and Instagram and such. So they're good. A lot of people count on them. They have a lot of followers. So, and I would recommend to anybody that if you're into Star Wars, go ahead and check out StarWarsReporter.com and like them on Twitter or on their website or whatnot. And they do some spoilers and some news and huge Mark Hamill fanboys. So anything Mark Hamill related, they're gonna repost and retweet.
There you go.
And talk about. So.
Good stuff, man. Well, anyways, as I said, familyfather.com is your website. Where else can the folks reach you on social media if they have any questions for you, if they want to contact you at all?
Yeah, well, really, I haven't put any limitations on comments. You can sign up for it. There's also links to the various social medias, but this is kind of my new site to rope in all my old existing names and whatnot. But so it's familyfather.com, FamilyFatherFL on Facebook, FamilyFatherFL on Twitter, and I think Family Father FL on Instagram, or I may not have set that one up completely yet. But Facebook, I do very little on the Family Father FL Facebook. I'm going to set it to where those are kind of extra distribution points. So everything will be done from my website. So when I post a new story, I'll have it set to automatically post to Facebook and Twitter. Facebook has always, for me, my real Facebook page or my real Facebook site has always been just close family and friends. I'm very political. I'm very
Right. No, I wasn't saying you should give away your
no,
own
I don't.
personal
No, I didn't
Facebook
think so. No,
profile. Just
I'm just commenting that like I almost missed that. Like I want to put that because that's where I have a lot of followers and such.
right.
But I don't want people that read Family Father seeing every single one of my sometimes first morning emotional response reactions to a post.
Right. No, I understand completely.
And Twitter is more my retweeting celebrities I follow stuff. So really, they can check me out on Family Father FL at either Facebook or Twitter, but know that those are really secondary to the website. The website is set up as a news site. Go to the site. The first thing you're going to see is a few pictures. Click on something that sounds interesting. I have the only ads that are in place right now are the Place Saver ads that came with the theme I purchased to do this WordPress site. So you're not going to get hit with a bunch of pop-ups when you go to a list of top 10 whatevers. And I will never do that, right? There will be eventually some ads to try to monetize it. But right now, it's basically just a front page that has some stories. They revolve based on either me putting them as editorial pick or by being the most recent in one of the categories that's followed. It's stuff about Disney, stuff about Star Wars, stuff about schools in the area. But really, if you had to, in a quick elevator speech, all it is my wife and I are people that are very intentional about the raising of our kids. We're involved in everything. That is not to say we're helicopter parents. Do not care what grades they get, are not going to help them get better ones. We will give them time to study. We'll help them if they have a question. We don't do the work for them. We don't bug the teachers about the grades they do or don't get. We will make sure they're not being bullied by the class bully, and we'll make sure that they're friends with the right friends. We watch who they talk to, where they go. We don't let them sleep over at people we don't know. We don't let them drive with people we don't know.
Yeah.
We don't let them be watched by people we don't know. But that said, it's really just one family's take on what it is to raise kids in the theme park capital of the world. And a lot of it is theme parks, but a lot of it that I haven't gotten to post yet is about other things. And we learned a lot from the lean years in the early 2000s about things like doing Disney without a ticket. Disney is 56 square miles of magic.
That's true.
And the resorts, the hotels, my quick tip on that, almost everything at Disney, including the restaurants in Epcot, are outsourced. They're not owned by Disney. So the restaurants in Epcot are not owned by Disney companies. They're owned by local families or conglomerates. So that said, Disney must allow anybody on property. So don't be intimidated by the guard gate at Animal Kingdom if you want to go check out a restaurant there. You don't have to have they'll ask you, are you checking in? Do you have reservations? Feel free to say no to both questions. No, I'm coming to check out the resort. I'm coming to grab a bite to eat at your quick service. I'm coming to have a drink at your bar.
Well, there you go.
They outsource those companies. They must let people in for those purposes. So go there, explore, find out what you like. And if you want some heads up, because there are hundreds of restaurants and bars at Disney, and we've been to most of them. But so we're going to be giving some quick tips on ones that are neat, good places to see the fireworks, good places to get a steak, and places that you would think are but aren't, stuff like that. So it's really just raising a family in Central Florida. Tips and tricks and news and reviews.
Thank you very much to Keith Johnson of FamilyFather.com. Really interesting guy. You definitely had a lot to say about a lot of different things, but I think FamilyFather.com is a really interesting website, especially if you're local to the Orlando area, or if you're planning on visiting the Orlando area and want to get some information based on a guy who lives here and a guy who knows the area very well. This is FamilyFather.com is definitely the place to go. Kind of interesting to hear how he got to where he is, and just kind of his his viewpoints on different things, I can definitely identify with him in a lot of different ways. So it's a really interesting conversation, and I hope you enjoyed it. As far as some upcoming events, Vertebreaker definitely has a few different things planned for the month of July and August. Starting with Sunday, July 24th, we were going to be with 9 Mile Drive and Framing the Red at Piper's Sports Bar in Green Acres, which is just outside of West Palm Beach. Later on that Saturday, July 30th, we will be live at the County Line Saloon in Melbourne for a Shout to the Heavens, which is a tribute to the late great Dino Diattore. That guy was really just a staple of the Brevard local music scene. There will be a lot of different bands there. Check out the event page for that. Also, in August 13th, we will be at the Days to Come CD release party at the Shady Oaks Lounge in Palm Bay. Days to Come, as you may know, are good friends of ours from Albany, Georgia. They will be down to have a party for the release of their latest EP. Should be a really great show. Queen Dementia will be there as well. Then a couple weeks after that, we will be at the Sports Page for the first time in over 2 years. It's been a while since we played the Sports Page in Satellite Beach. We will be there with Vapid and several other bands, so that should be a good night. So that is it for this episode. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at jackxconnor, like me on Facebook at facebook.com/jackconnormusic. Definitely feel free to check out my band, Vertebreaker, at www.vertebreaker.net. We have links to all our social media on there. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, make sure you email me at jackconnorpodcast@gmail.com or tweet me with the hashtag Phoenix Report. Remember, guys, this show can only get better if I'm hearing from you. If you have any questions or comments for me or any suggestions, make sure you keep it positive and constructive. I mean, if you're just there to tell me how much I suck, then that's not really gonna help me. I mean, you could always say that, but I'd rather you didn't. If you have any suggestions for me about how to make the show better, I'm all ears. And if you're listening to this on YouTube or iTunes, make sure you subscribe and go back and listen to all the other episodes. Thank you again for listening. This has been the Phoenix Report. I'm Jack Connor. I'll see you again soon. Bye.